This week in the Regency, we're back to carriages. I thought because we skipped the carriage one last month because of Easter, that we would have two in May. And today it's all about the Phaeton. Let's start, first of all, with understanding the word. This is how it's spelt. It's a Greek name. The word is named after a demigod. His name was Phaeton. This is an image of him getting into trouble. So the story goes that Helios, the sun god, and in Greek myth, Helios, the sun god, drove the horses of the sun in a chariot around the world every day. And that's where you get sunlight from. The sun traveling across the sky is Helios in his chariot. Phaeton was Helios's illegitimate son, and being illegitimate really got to him. And he said to his father, "You don't really care about me because I'm illegitimate." And Helios went, "No, no, 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 of course I care about you. You're my son. Oh, anything you like. Ask anything you like." And he goes, "I want to drive the sun for the day. I want to drive the chariot of the sun for the day." And Helios goes, "Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah." But he had promised. And so he he gave Helios the sun's chariot for the day and the horses of the sun. And you can see here that the horses don't look all that happy about it. He wasn't such a great driver. He couldn't control them, and he brought it too close to the earth. And the earth started getting scorched. So Zeus got annoyed at this, and in order to save the earth and save humanity, he killed Phaeton with a lightning bolt, and the horses went back up to their normal round, and poor Phaeton was dead. So right from the beginning, the word Phaeton has been associated with accidents, and certainly you would think that perhaps it was accident prone, but we'll get to that in a minute. Our newspaper story today is actually an ad. It's from May 1811. I know that May 1811 is not strictly speaking part of the Regency, but it is at the time where they're getting all the legislation ready for the Regency. To be sold, a very handsome low phaeton for one or two horses. It is remarkably light and in excellent condition, having been used only one summer. There's a story there, and I'd love to know what it is. And will not require a shilling to be expended on it. It was built for a nobleman to use in his park and cost 95 guineas, besides several improvements which have been lately added to it. To prevent trouble, the lowest price is 30 guineas. Inquire at Hames Livery Stables, Riding House Lane, Great Portland Street, Oxford Road. Don't you want to know who the nobleman was? I wish I could follow that up, but I don't think I can. So it's a low phaeton. And this is where we get into the differences between what's safe and what's not safe. Now, William Phaeton, who is the carriage maker from whom we get the information about carriages, he really liked them. He called phaetons the most pleasant sort of carriage in use, as they contribute more than any other to health, amusement, and fashion. Now, the main difference between, say, a curricle and a phaeton, so a curricle was the other fashionable thing that one might drive, and the main difference was that the phaeton had four wheels. So a four-wheeled vehicle is inherently more stable than a two-wheeled one. And so when I went looking for accidents, there were actually fewer phaeton accidents than there were curricle accidents. And what we have here is the kind of standard phaeton. It's a middle range. It's probably they came in three sizes, small, medium, and big. This is a middle size. It's probably the most common, and it's the sort of phaeton that would have been in that advertisement. This is the kind of carriage that that man was selling. You'll notice it doesn't have any shafts, and that's because the shafts were added later depending on whether you wanted one or two horses. So curricles, of course, could also be adapted. I mean, basically, the difference between a curricle and a gig was that a curricle had two horses or four, and a gig had one. So what is all the kind of, kerfuffle about the high-perch phaeton? Well, this middle-sized phaeton was the most common and the most popular, easier to drive than a curricle because it was more stable. Or you could get a slightly higher one, which is a crane-necked phaeton. The crane neck is the bit at the back that's got that curve to it between the wheel and the carriage seat. It's made of iron, which made it heavier, and so you needed two horses to pull a crane-necked phaeton. And the one that people go on about a lot in Regency romances is this, the high-perch phaeton. You will remember, I'm sure if you're a Georgette Hare fan, how everyone was appalled at the idea that the Grand Sophie would drive herself a high-perch phaeton. But what's interesting is that the images of the high-perch phaeton that are out there are mostly of women driving it. Maybe because it's unusual, I don't know, but we have several. Here is one, which is sweetly called Two Young Ladies in Calico Dresses. And you can see that they are up quite high. So getting in and out of these is not easy in a dress. And they are being pulled by two horses. And they are horses rather than ponies. Whereas in this one, it's a bit hard to believe that either Thomas Rowlandson was, it's a fairly satirical drawing, I think. But you've got a lady up there with a high hat, which was also kind of semi-masculine, driving four horses in blinkers. Blinkers are those black things on the side of the horse that stops them getting distracted by what's on either side of them. They look quite small, and they certainly don't look matched, which one would expect them to be. The front ones are much smaller than the back ones, so I think it's quite satirical, this drawing. But nonetheless, it's a woman driving four in hand, and four in hand was the highest level of skill in driving. So we have several examples of women driving high-perch phaetons at this time. This is a high-perch crane-necked phaeton. Those horses look much better matched, frankly. You can see, and this is, I think, the point of them. People go, why, okay, they're fashionable, but so are curricles. Curricles are fashionable. Why did people want to drive these things? And my theory is that it's the same reason that people want to drive four-wheel drives now, because it gets them up. You have a better view of the road, you have a better view of the traffic. Unfortunately, like a lot of those cars, they're not as safe as the low ones. They turn over more, and you're more likely to crash, more likely to turn over if you crash. But it does give you that illusion of, okay, I can see what's coming. It's easier for me to decide what to do, and so on. You'll notice that the man here has a very long whip. It's long in two ways, and it's long in overall length, but it's also long in its shaft. A typical whip had a shorter cane, but to drive four horses in a high-perch phaeton, you needed a whip that got over the top of the horses' heads and could reach the leader. The leader is the right-hand horse there. There was an old saying that, if you were good with a whip, you could take a fly off the leader's ear. If we look at Our Lady, she also has a whip with a very long shaft. And so does this young lady here. But with it looks like a shorter actual whip on that one. So when one drove horses, particularly four in hand, you not only had to be able to carry the reins and do, drive, literally drive, you also had to be able to use the whip in order not to hurt the horses. It's not about whipping them up in the way it is in a race. It's about guiding them away from going the wrong direction and that kind of stuff. You can see that whereas a jockey hits the whip on the hindquarters, a whip here couldn't possibly hit the hindquarters of those horses. So it's more about guidance than it is about hurting the horses, and certainly not in terms, you can get them to go faster by cracking the whip. And that's what stagecoaches did. But it's actually quite hard to do well without hurting yourself, which is another reason, I guess, for having that long cane, to make it easier for you to crack the whip, literally. So finally, I think we ought to talk about the low phaeton of the earlier ad. It may have looked like this. This one has shafts on it for a single horse. It would have probably looked a lot like this. Again, it's a crane neck. And of this is a pony Berlin is the technical term for this kind of phaeton. And our carriage maker, William Phaeton, really likes this one. In fact, he's more enthusiastic about this carriage than he is about just about anything else in his catalogue. And this is what he says. For a safe, light, simple, and cheap four-wheeled phaeton, the Berlin is to be recommended in preference to any. So we're going to leave it on that one. That's This Week in the Regency. I'm Elizabeth Layden. I'll see you next week in the Regency.